Well, while Donald Trump held a military parade in Washington, D.C. today, thousands of Americans were protesting in cities right across the country against his administration. The rallies are being called No King's Day protests and call for Trump to be dethroned. It's hard not to wonder if our most powerful ally is going to devour itself in civil strife. Joining us now to help make sense of it all is Brad vs. Everyone podcast host Brad Polumbo. Brad, thanks for joining us. Let's start with the military parade. Good idea or bad idea? Why shouldn't the US celebrate its military, especially on the Army's 250th birthday?
Well, I think we should celebrate our military and the people who sacrifice to protect our country. I'm pretty skeptical of the idea of this military parade, though, primarily just because of the cost. I mean, $45 million comes out to about $500,000 per minute. And they're literally bringing in tanks that break the streets in Washington, D.C. So then you have to go and repair all the streets because they're not meant to bear the load of tanks rolling through the streets. I just think it's a bit much, but I do keep rolling my eyes at the kind of hysterical reaction you see to it as if it's some sort of sign of fascism or something. I don't think it's actually that deep. I think it's just a big parade that, in my view, is slightly wasteful with taxpayer dollars.
What can you tell us about the No King's Day protests? Surely people aren't seriously worried that Trump is trying to set up his own kingdom. I mean, the ICE raids in Los Angeles were an example of the Trump administration doing what they were elected to do. That's democracy, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've had these No Kings protests across the country, and thankfully these have at least been primarily peaceful. We had one here in the city I live in Grand Rapids, without much incident. I mean, look, some of these people are really worked up about Trump. And I mean, he does troll them when he talks about Trump 2028 and a third term and all of that. But I don't really think these protests are a very effective way to counter message him because it gives into the same kind of hysteria that they've used against him for a long time that leads a lot of people to roll their eyes. And then, frankly, his supporters just don't pay attention. So they can march in the street and they can yell about it till they turn blue in the face. I don't think Trump and his supporters really care at all. And I don't think it's a super effective protesting tactic.
Well, Brad, in the middle of all of that, we've got, of course, the assassination of a Democrat lawmaker in Minnesota. That comes hot on the heels of assassination attempts against President Trump. Are these outlier events or are they symptoms of a dangerously divided country? How worried are you by... I mean, obviously, any assassination is terrible, but what about the confluence of them? How worried are you about what's happening to the country?
You know, honestly, I'm incredibly concerned. The details of this story are, honestly, they're one of the most chilling things I've ever read. This guy wore a fake mask, dressed up like law enforcement, and went to the homes of these state lawmakers to shoot and attempt to kill them and their spouses. And at least so far, two of them, one lawmaker and her husband, are dead, and the other two are injured. It's harrowing. And it would be one thing if it was an outlier incident, if it was the only example of political violence in, years. But we just see example after example recently in the US that I don't remember happening growing up. This is something that has emerged as a real trend in the last decade. And it's disturbing. We need to say enough is enough. And that means social media, the mainstream media, need to stop implicitly joking about supporting killing Trump, joking about being sad the assassin missed when he tried to shoot President Trump. The jokes aren't funny. A lot of people don't think they are jokes. A lot of people genuinely do support violence in America. And it's the kind of thing that I think threatens the very fabric of our civilization. Honestly, it down that way madness lies, and we've got to stamp it out as a country because this is becoming a really disturbing problem, and I think it's becoming more prevalent in recent years.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It is really disturbing. We talked at the top of the show about this rising level of lethal, in many cases, political violence that I don't think we've really seen, certainly in recent history. Now, the CBS News Network has been called out for promoting the No King's Day protest, seemingly promoting their merchandise on their Twitter feed. You just mentioned the media, but how much responsibility do you think the media bear for the chaos going on in the US right now?
Well, at least at least they're not hiding it anymore. Their rampant bias and blatant partisanship when they're actually just promoting the merch of an anti-Trump protest. It's actually laughable, but at the same time it's sad because listen, I consider myself a journalist. The media plays a very important role, and they've discredited themselves with this kind of rank bias, and it's really, really unfortunate that they've chosen to squander their credibility with so much of the American public at the exact time when, when you have a president doing so much. Some of it I agree with, some of it I don't, but Trump is doing so much every day. You need an honest and fair media to report on it, but we don't really have that these days, at least not in large part.
No, well, when you've got the media stirring things up the way they do and quite often misrepresenting what's going on. We've all heard about the peaceful protests while rioters are going crazy in the background, plus politicians ramping up the rhetoric. It's no wonder there's major problems there. Brad, thanks for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.